There we go. And we're just waiting for everything to light up. All right. We are live on Periscope. And I'm just waiting for my lovely executive producer to let us know we are live on Facebook and YouTube and LinkedIn. In 3, 2, 1. Welcome to Real Hospitality Live. I am always excited to have my good friend Kevin on with us. Kevin Freeborn is the guru of food safety in North America. There's so many questions that everybody has, especially in the food service industry, about what's a proper procedure, what's safe, what's hokum, what's really the science behind what's going on, and how can we feel confident about moving forward. Kevin is the founder and owner of Freeborn Associates. My guest today, my friend Kevin Freeborn. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing today, Jason?
I like I was saying pre-show, I am 90% better with everything now that I got a haircut, because it was just that one thing that was driving me nuts. I'm like, oh my God, is this ever going to end? So it just felt like the next positive step, right?
Well, I think there's a run on clippers right now at Walmart.
Well, Robbie was threatening to get me a Flowbee, and with the vacuum and do it for me, to which I staunchly said no. You've got some really cool stuff going on right now, and I want to talk about that first before we get into procedures and all of the things that are going on. But let's talk about what you're doing with your online training for food safe. I mean, now you can do it around the world.
Yeah, we've, one of the things that was a challenge once this pandemic kicked in was the fact that we couldn't have traditional classrooms. Right. So one of the things we thought about internally as a team and came up with was to create a virtual classroom. We reached out to our trainers to see if they'd be interested in that. And it turns out we've got a great interest in it. We've had our first classrooms going. We've been learning a little bit as we go, but one of the things that we've been able to do is still allow individuals to have access to an instructor, a qualified instructor, as they go through their training rather than the self-directed training. So we have both of those options available to people still, which is one of the things that we felt was going to be important to the end user. Right. And also so our trainers can keep their hand in it, and they just don't know when they're not going to be able to, or they are going to be able to get back into a classroom setting.
I think having the trainer do the program, because I've done the training program with you, I think the benefit to that is to be able to ask questions when the ideas come up, and to be able to tell stories that go with the materials, because that's really what's always stuck in my mind, right? I mean, I think it was 100 years ago that we did our training session together in Moncton, and it's got to be like 2007 or something like that. Yeah. But I still remember the training course, and I remember the stories that go with it, and I have used that over the years in maintaining food safe, in teaching it in restaurants, in my own restaurants and management that I've been in, to be able to really kind of hammer that home. So when I have to tell them about a particular thing, I say, remember the story I told you about, and these are things that you told me.
Yeah, and I think one of the key things about teaching or instructing is the idea or the concept of storytelling. Storytelling and discussions really increase people's retention. We don't really remember facts and figures as much as we remember a story. So if you can incorporate the facts and figures and the concepts into stories and into discussions, then the retention goes up and people are more likely to apply those things when they get back to their workspace, which is our ultimate desire, is to change their behavior in the workspace. So we've done that with the virtual classroom. They're able to tell stories using the new technology like Zoom.
Yeah.
They can have them in there. They can watch the PowerPoint presentation and work their way through that. And the other thing is there's a ton of flexibility with these virtual classrooms. We've provided every trainer with a place to start. So we've given them all of the workbook that their learners can review ahead of time, and quizzes that they can complete. And so we've sort of flipped the classroom. So we're getting them to do the work ahead of time. And then when the presentation comes, they've got a good idea of what they're learning about, and they can have those questions ready. And you can also incorporate discussions. So you can have a discussion between all the participants live online. And so these things aren't lost. It's different, but they're still there in the virtual classroom, which is great.
I think the cool thing about having the virtual classroom also is that if you want to train an entire staff, they can do it from home at an appointed time. You don't have to worry about, oh, whether or not Mary can make it in today, or something has happened and so couldn't make the class. I mean, everybody needs to have food safe in my book. I don't care what your region says. And it's funny, I just had this conversation yesterday about the food safe program with two chefs when we're preparing for a show that we're doing next week. And I said, I sat with a Red Seal advisory board many years ago, and they thought that in your first block of your Red Seal, that it was more important for you to be baking cookies than it was to learn food safe. That was going to wait till block 2 the next year. And I thought, yeah, what the hell are you talking about? This is the most important thing that you need to know. And I really don't think that people should have any business being in the industry until you get this first.
Yeah, we've always felt, I mean, our program, Managing Food Safety, is a food safety certification program that we've been running for a few years now. And it's a foundation. This is foundational information. You really can't go on to other things, I don't believe, until you've done that. And right now, one of the big pieces of reassurance that we can give customers when they're thinking about coming back to a restaurant is to let them know that we've made sure everybody in our organization, not just one person per shift, but everybody in our organization has been certified in food safety, because those principles that are being taught are the foundation of everything that we'll talk about when it comes to how to reopen your restaurant and make sure you're doing it safely for the employees as well as for your customers, and reduce risk for your organization overall.
Well, I mean, I've been saying this for the last couple of weeks, that the rise and fall of the hospitality industry right now is going to be based on the perception of the customers, and how comfortable do they feel? Do they feel that you've done enough? Do they feel that you are safe and sanitary, and that you have done something, regardless of what their level of belief in the science or the sickness or whatever is going on with things? People are still in the back of their mind going, is it safe? And are they acting in a safe way? So I think this ties into that in a big way.
Yes, I think it's going to be key that the communication that you have with every stakeholder, but starting with your customers, that communication has to reassure them that they're welcome and that they're safe when it comes to dining in their operations. And so that communication has to go out even before they arrive. I mean, you've seen it already, but smart operators are going to make sure that's front and center on their websites, on all of their communications, their email texts, email blasts that they're sending out to people. What are we doing to protect you? That's the first thing that concerns that customer. So yeah, that's got to be definitely front and center.
If you're just joining us on any of our platforms, on YouTube, LinkedIn, Periscope, this is the information you need if you're in the hospitality industry. My guest today is Kevin Freeborn of Freeborn Associates. I like to drop that in because sometimes people join a few minutes late and they'll go, what are you guys talking about? So going back to before we came live, everybody has an opinion about masks and safety procedures and whatnot. And a lot of the stuff that you said, for me, I was like, okay, well, that makes sense because I've been kind of poo-poo about it. And I've had conversations with chefs who are working on the line now. My good friend in Ottawa has been on the line for a couple of weeks, or at least a little over a week. And he said, it's brutal having these masks on the line. It's so hot. And then I was talking with Chef Dwayne Keller out of the US, excuse me, out of the US yesterday. And he said, a lot of the masks, especially the thicker ones, block 40 to 50% of the oxygen that you get, and you're already in a hot kitchen. So that's really kicking your ass. So going back to the conversation about the barber, I went and got the haircut, and this was before we came live, so we'll have it again. But then when the barber cut my hair, he had to take my mask off anyway to finish this part, and then to do my beard. And he was down with the clippers and in my face with his own mask on, but it's just like a dental hygienist mask, not like the full, gas mask from World War II system. And so I was without the mask, and I mean, I'm fine, and I wasn't nervous about having it. I preferred not to have it on. And he had to take it off me anyway. So you were talking about the effectiveness of the mask. So let's go back to that.
Sure. I mean, there are a lot of experts out there, and the experts that I've listened to have talked about what purpose the mask serves. And there's lots of discussion on that. Some of it's real, some of it's not real. So watch your source. But the bottom line is the mask has a tendency to protect other people. It's not really that much about protecting you unless you're wearing an N95 or something like that, which we wouldn't even have access to at this point. But wearing a mask right now is about reducing the chance of spread, because if you cough or sneeze or whatever, that mask slows the amount of droplet that might come out through that mask. So it's not going to go as far as if you didn't have a mask on. Okay. So that's one of the key things. So really, the ideal situation, if people are going to use masks, is that everybody's wearing one, so that we're all protecting each other, not so much about protecting ourselves. So that would be one thing. The other thing that we need to be aware of when it comes to masks is if they're put on, you need to make sure you don't handle the front of the mask. First, you've got to wash your hands before you put it on. You put the mask on and you just hook it over your ears. And then after you've finished using it and you're doffing, you just lift it off your ears and you dispose of it. If it's a reusable mask, then it needs to go into a washing machine with detergent to be washed thoroughly every time you use it. And again, you have to wash your hands and sanitize your hands every time you change those. So that's a little bit about using masks. The other thing that we're seeing a lot proposed for the line are face shields. And I've talked to chefs in the last week or so, one of our trainers who's a chef, and she's still doing catering functions or gearing up to do some more catering functions. And she does cooking in the home for some people. So they're wearing masks and face shields. And the face shields will help protect you as well as other people too. So I think we're going to see that more in restaurants. And I think one of the things that you're seeing now is how do we make this sort of comfortable for people in the environment? So for the staff, but also for the customers, when your server comes to the table with a surgical style mask on, what does that feel like in today's world? So a lot of operators have gotten smart and they're thinking, okay, let's make branded masks.
Yep, I've seen those.
And another thing, is people don't like to handle door handles when they walk into a restaurant. So now people have come out with these little hooks that go on your keychain. Basically, you can just reach out and hook the handle and open the door without actually touching the handle. And so my thought was, here's a great opportunity. We sell T-shirts and baseball caps in restaurants. Let's
Yeah.
start selling branded masks and door openers and whatever else we can come up with.
You mentioned gloves, and we had a great debate yesterday in this pre-show thing that we were doing with chefs, and in different regions, it's, oh well, you need to be wearing gloves, and another, you need to be washing your hands, and the gloves are the gloves are really more of a hazard than not, because people don't take them off and change them well enough, et cetera, et cetera. And I think even post crazy time, this was a debate. What's your opinion, your expert thoughts on this?
Well, I think you have to go back to why are people thinking about using gloves in the first place? I agree that, and you need to check with your health department, because some, as you say, are probably going to mandate this. But I think the key thing is, yes, you got to wash your hands every time you put on the gloves and every time you take off the gloves and throw them away. It's more about minimizing hand contact with things. So there's two things. One is minimizing hand contact with food. So if you're garnishing a drink as a bartender, use tongs to put the garnish on the drink.
Okay.
And the same goes for food. You don't want to be using your hands anymore to garnish food or to present the plate and so on. That's one aspect. I think now the other aspect that maybe people are thinking about is the contact surfaces that they're touching all the time with their hands. So if you are shedding the virus and you do get some on your hands and then you touch a surface, then is it safer if you've washed your hands and put on gloves and touch that surface? It may be, as long as you haven't contaminated the glove, by touching your face or that kind of thing before you touch that contact surface. So I guess my recommendation is you're going to have to wash your hands a lot now, more than ever before.
Right.
And you're going to have to do it properly, the way we used to describe doing it in the food safety training courses, 20 seconds. I know it seems like a long time, but you need to thoroughly wash them and dry them with paper towel to be effective.
I can sing happy birthday to myself 2 times, no problem. I'm good with that.
Well, and here's another thing that I see happening out there, and maybe it's a bit of a guidance. You need to, some organizations are saying, okay, we're going to set a timer every 30 minutes. When that timer goes off, you wash your hands. That's a reminder. You wash your hands in case you can't remember to do it as frequently as you should. Right. And the other thing that I'm seeing happening with regard to the contact surfaces is companies are now employing an additional person on staff. And all they do is move around and sanitize contact surfaces every 30 minutes. So everything that's touched is cleaned and sanitized or even disinfected. Things like door handles, garbage handles, touch screens, washroom doors, toilets, sinks, everything. This is a full-time job, and a lot of companies now have realized that, so they're going to bring somebody in to do that full-time to reduce the chance of that. So gloves, if used properly, can benefit, but the trick, as you pointed out, is you got to make sure you thoroughly wash your hands before putting them on, and when you take them off, wash your hands again then.
I think the debate with gloves is big. If you are washing your hands every time you touch something new and all of that, I mean, it's going to be awfully rough on your hands. But the other side of that is people have to be responsible about the gloves. And I always tell the story about the gloves. I was the president of a restaurant group, and my first week I went into a restaurant and I met with one of the franchisees, and I met with the franchisee, and I thought, wow, this is one of the dirtiest restaurants I've ever been in. And then he proceeded to grab the garbage with his gloves on, carry it out to the garbage bin, come back in with the same gloves on and start making a pizza. Well, that was his last day as a franchisee. And, but he was like, oh, well, I have my gloves on. It's okay. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
it's not the point. It's not so you don't have to wash your hands.
Yeah.
So again, I mean, I wanted to touch on that and kind of quell that debate a little bit. It's super interesting about the masks and the face shields. I mean, I get the thought process behind it. I just don't see the industry implementing it in a big way. I think that's something that people will go, yeah, I heard people are doing that, but we're not going to do that here.
I don't know. I was watching CBC last night, and a large restaurant owner was there, a big club owner actually, where they would normally have literally thousands of people, and they're going to be down to where they might have had 4,000 apparently in this place at one point. They're going to be down to 400. So whether it's going to be financially viable just based on the numbers, that's one question. But they're going with branded masks for all their
Good
employees. I think here's the other key point to that. The other key point to that is not just to reassure your customers, but to reassure your employees too.
Yeah.
So it does give them some measure of feeling a little more comfortable about it themselves, I think. So that might be the other benefit.
Are you finding it weird when you're going out like to places now? I mean, we went to the mall last night, for example, and the gal at the went to Old Navy. I bought a new pair of jeans. So, and the gal at the changing area was like full social distance, and she was like backing up as she was talking to me, and I thought, wow, this is super unpleasant. It was it really. I mean, I get it, but it still makes the shopping experience, and I'm sure the dining experience, just that much less hospitable.
Yes, I think there's going to be a period of time where everybody has to get used to the new environment, customers as well as employees, and get to the point where they're comfortable in the environment, knowing they can provide some level of hospitality still,
Right.
without and still respect all of the things that have to be respected to keep everybody safe. But that'll take a bit of time. I think the training will evolve. It will come out. I mean, nobody's really trained for this before, so now we have to figure out how are we going to make people feel really welcome when they arrive,
Right,
whilst making sure they're standing on their square, or circle that says, stand here.
yeah.
So I think that's going to be the big challenge, is how do we incorporate that hospitality training so that people still like the idea. And there are opportunities. I mean, the downside of the distancing within the restaurant by removing half of your furniture, or another idea I had was leave the tables where they are, but make them into displays of some sort to promote your business, so people realize they can't sit at that table. These things, when people come in, maybe you really promote the idea of an intimate experience now, so my kids who are grown adults haven't had a chance to have a nice intimate dinner out in a while.
Right.
Maybe if they felt, okay, this restaurant's making sure they've done all the right things to protect their customers, and they're only going to keep small groups of people, 2 or 4 people at a table. So we can go in and we can be spaced out and we can enjoy an intimate dinner. And when they come to the table, it will be unobtrusive surface. So it will be unobtrusive because we're just going to put the plate on the table or your drink on the table, and then you can pull it towards you and grab it yourself. And that gives a measure of protection to the server, as well as the customer is going to feel more comfortable probably doing that, rather than have someone reach in front of them to put a plate down on a table, for example.
I think when you you mentioned the table itself. I mean, gone are the days for a while anyway, are having table talkers and table tents and having salt and pepper on the table and all those types of things are all coming off, right? And
Yeah.
so, because you can't sanitize cardboard table talker.
Yeah, so I think what's going to happen with regard to things like menus, there's a few things. One is it's hard to get some supplies right now for operators. So I think they're going to have to do a quick review of what they're offering and slim down the offerings to hopefully the favorites that people have loved in the past.
Right.
The other thing is in terms of the actual menu itself, technology is going to play a big role here. A few years ago, even a couple years ago at one of the big restaurant shows, I remember this fascinating table that was out there, and you could play video games on it, but it also brought the menu up, and it was a touch screen, so you could order. You didn't even need a waiter or server at this point. You could place your order right from the table and it would come up to the server into the kitchen. So that's a great device. But I've also seen in a lot of airports and places like that, tablets that are available.
Yep.
The menu is on there. You can, some companies are using QR codes, so you can use your cell phone and scan the QR code. So there's lots of alternatives that we're just going to have to get used to as customers and as operators for getting rid of that. Now, the other option is if you don't have that technology, you can use disposable menus. You
Right.
give one out and just tell the customer, listen, on the flip side is all of our takeout services, please feel free to take this home and use it if you need to have takeout or pickup of food service. So those are a few of the things to consider around the menu options.
I'm going to take this opportunity to give a shout out to two of my friends. One is my good friend Minto Roy, who is the head of Social Print in Vancouver, and they do printing. And he and I just had a conversation this morning, actually, that they do menus on sugar sheet, which is plant-based paper that's made from the husks of sugarcane that's normally disposed of anyway. So we're not just out chopping down trees so that we can throw away menus. This is a sustainable product. So there's a shout out to him on that. And I think that's a great idea if you're going to do that. It's an environmentally smart and conscious move. And the other is our client, Eric Arsenal out of the US. And he has the tablets that have the menu. And he and I had a conversation about 2 weeks ago, and we were talking about how it's a great opportunity now to be able to, you can just bring those back after people handle them. You can sanitize them, wipe them down, and for reuse again and again. And that's for sit down dining. And you don't have to worry about having something that people expect you to throw in the garbage.
So here's a little tip on that. With the tablets and even with the pay terminals, in order to reassure your customers, bring a sanitizing wipe to the table, wipe it down, put it on the table.
Right.
So it's done in front of them, because there's going to be people who don't believe that you sanitize. I hear this every time I go to the grocery store. Did they really sanitize that cart, or are they really doing that?
Right.
If you do it right in front of the customer, then I think you reassure them that you take it seriously and they can see with their own eyes that it's being done.
That's great. Going right back to public perception. What are people seeing that you're doing? What efforts are you making? Right.
Yeah.
That's great. So the online program that you're doing now, it is the evolution of the old program that I took with you. And now it has a new name and new information, and now it's available online. So what's the new name of it again?
Managing Food Safety is the name of the course. Yeah. And everybody has a responsibility.
Kevin, that keeps me from screwing up NFSTP.
Yeah. MFS, only three letters right? To remember.
Easier for me. And for the program to do it live and virtual, how long does are the instructors actually teaching for? So if an organization's gonna have their people sit down and do the program, is it broken up, or is it one class all the way through?
So there's a lot of flexibility here.
Okay.
One thing that we have to get used to is that presenting online is different than in a classroom. there's always been a desire to do this kind of training in one day. Part of that is cost related because you've got to pull employees out and they've got to drive somewhere and you've got to
Right.
rent a place and all that stuff. Well, a lot of those factors are no longer an issue. Your employees don't have to travel anywhere. They can do it from home. There's no cost associated with that part of it. And the same goes for the facilitators. The trainers don't have to rent a hall or anything like that. So those are some of the benefits. You could deliver it in one day. I've seen it done, but it's an awfully long day, even in a classroom.
Right.
So in the virtual classroom, we're helping educate instructors in terms of breaking this up appropriately over a number of days and expressing the benefit of that to their clients, that their people will get a better experience if they can break it up. The first part of the first day is likely going to incorporate some helping people figure out how their Zoom works and how to mute or unmute their mic and all of those things. So that's something that will be new and different for the participants and for the instructors. So our suggestion is, divide it up over 3 or 4 sessions. And like I said, flip the classroom, have them do the work ahead of time, read the material and do the quizzes. And then they're better prepared when you sit down to do your Zoom session and your PowerPoint presentation.
Well, that makes sense. And I think the benefit there for everybody is the cost of travel and the overhead cost or the cost for operators as well to have to bring staff in and all of that. So the certification and the testing, you're doing the online testing as well. So you're doing proctoring online and that's happening at the end of the class. Is that how it's working?
Yeah, so what happens is the certification exam is part of something we call our Proctor Me service. So this is our in-house service. We have not third-partied this out to anybody. We wanted to have control over everything ourselves, so that we can protect people's privacy, so that they don't have to worry about pictures of photo ID or any of those things being distributed or on a server somewhere. So our team does the proctoring, our in-house team does the proctoring when the exam when the training rather is finished. You can't actually access the exam until the training is complete.
Okay.
And what we do is we give the instructors a special code that they give to their students. And when they go to do the exam portion, it pops up and it says, do you have a coupon? They click on that, enter their coupon, and they get into the web proctoring process. And that requires a web camera with a microphone, which most laptops have today.
So it's interactive, at least.
Yes.
I think the benefit of that is that it legitimizes the course and the testing in an online way, that if you're just to get somebody else to go and click all of the multiple choice questions and do a test for you at the end, and all of a sudden you have a certificate, because there's all kinds of certifications like that online. This actually shows that people have learned the material, learned the procedures, have interacted with an instructor, and it's beneficial for the operation to have had somebody trained to actually know this stuff when they come. It's not just a certificate that somebody took online.
Yeah, and the certificate's a little different too. It's all digital these days, and it's all protected online, so that there's no way they can be forged or faked. And also so that the learner gets to promote it on their social feeds, so through LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, they can link this certificate, so it has a little bit of value, and they'll never lose it because it's always online.
Yes.
So we used to have to charge people to print it out and mail it out to them and all that stuff in the past.
Yep.
So that's all done now. Some of the advantage of technology.
So do you see how things are right now? And I think we'll finish off with this, but what are your thoughts on, do you see this big change in going to masks and face shields and the social distancing thing and all of that, and everybody being scared to death? Do you think that is something that is now becomes part of our dining culture, or do you think that's something that we do right now because it's front of mind and there's no vaccine for this particular disease? Do you think that's something that we hang on to for the next several years, or do you think it's something that we do for the next 6 months?
I think that there are elements of it that will be short-lived, and I think there are elements that I hope we hang on to in the long term. So as far as masks and gloves and things like that go, I hope that that can be short-lived, but even if they're not, I think we can learn how to work with them and create a fun and engaging and safe environment for people. And that's going to be the trick, the whole conviviality of the dining experience. So you can still be pleasant, you can still be funny, you can still do a lot of what we used to do that drew the customer to our operations in the past. Some of the things that we may not have been doing in the past, even though they were taught in terms of food safety, that I hope we hold on to. And I hope the silver lining out of this is that we create some habits that we knew we should have, but we didn't practice often enough to make into a habit. And those would be the things like less hand contact with ready-to-eat foods, cleaning and sanitizing of the environment, cleaning our hands or washing our hands as often as we should be. All of these things we've taught in the past, but when you spend one day in a classroom doing those things or learning those things, and then you go back to business as usual, there's a good chance you don't have a chance to develop that habit. So that's what I'm really hoping carries forward out of this, and maybe one of the beneficial parts, if there's anything beneficial about this experience.
Well, this is it. And I've been saying, hopefully this makes people, forces people in operations to improve their standards, if nothing else. We do have one question that I'm seeing here. Robbie, is there? So the question that's up here right now, Kevin, is, which you've already answered, but I want to respect the gentleman for asking. And how cool is this? This is Frank from Qatar Airways. So we're not just in Canada. We're not in Kansas anymore, Kevin. So for the certificates, do you get it online or you get it in mail? I've never understood how it works, and we've answered that. But now it's a digital certificate.
Yep, digital certificate, accessible anywhere in the world, blockchain protected. So it's the real deal.
That's awesome. And Robbie, was there? No, that was okay. That was the one question. We've answered everybody's questions. So we've done good. Thank you so much for your time, as always, Kevin. You're the voice of reason and the go-to. I love having you on just to calm all of the he said, she said questions and the stuff, even in my own mind, because I'm having these conversations with people on a daily basis, and they're saying, well, oh, I think this and I think that, and everybody's talking about different stuff on social media because they're all crazy on there anyway. And nobody really has a definitive thing. So thank you for making me feel more comfortable. Thank you for answering questions about everything from masks to gloves to how we go forward. And congratulations on your online program. I think that's awesome. I love that it's so accessible, and it's great for the trainers too to feel comfortable to go out and promote, because I think this really your program is something that needs to be known. It needs to be part of our culture. And again, I don't think that people should be in the business unless they have it. Part of being professional in this food service industry. Absolutely. Well, again, my guest today has been Kevin Freeborn of Freeborn Associates. And I always joke, but I mean it, is the guru of food safety. And you can find him at Freeborn Associates on their website. And you can also find him on LinkedIn. And if you're watching this live, say hello. And if you have questions, feel free to go back on the video. If you're watching the extended, not live version, Kevin and I will be watching that over the next little bit and going back and answering any questions that you might have. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you. My pleasure as always.
All right. Take care of yourself.